I want to start today's podcast with an email I received from a subscriber, and her name is Kim. Very interesting. Listen up. Kim says, Frank, I'm a big fan of your podcasts. I've begun to subscribe to some of your services. I really appreciate your honesty and insight. I was a widow and single mom for 10 years and became head of household overnight. I've enjoyed learning as much as I can about finance and investing. That's really great to hear, Kim. You and Daniel both comment about capitalism, and you commented recently that at least the recent election suggested that Americans favored capitalism. I'm enclosing 2 excerpts from a book that is required reading in Fairfax County, Virginia for high school students. The county paid the author over $20,000 for an hour-long Zoom presentation and additionally signed a contract to purchase the books. I decided to read the book myself. This school district is one of the largest in the nation. I felt this was important enough to share with you and yours, as it is what our youth is being taught. Now, the name of this book is How to Be an Anti-Racist. Right? And thank you, Kim, for this. It's written by Ibram Kendi, who was an assistant professor of African American history at the University of Florida. Now, the book was published in August 2019. Not really a big deal. Didn't really get noticed too much. But sales surged after we saw a lot of the incidents, including George Floyd, right? Just sales. It became a New York Times bestseller, listed as 5th in Publishers Weekly hardcover nonfiction. This was in May and June. And, of course, the Washington Post praised the book. Now, here's the excerpt. He says, to love capitalism is to end up loving racism. To love racism is to end up loving capitalism. The conjoined twins are 2 sides of the same destructive body. The idea that capitalism is merely free markets, competition, free trade, supplying, demanding, and private ownership of the means of production operating for a profit is as whimsical and ahistorical as the white supremacist idea that calling something racist is a primary form of racism. Popular definitions of capitalism, like popular racist ideas, do not live in historical or material reality. Capitalism is essentially racist. Racism is essentially capitalist. They were birthed together from the same unnatural causes, and they shall one day die together from unnatural causes. Or racial capitalism will live into another epoch of theft and inequality, especially if activists naively fight the conjoined twins independently as if they're not the same. He goes on to say, this is really quick, because the efforts to provide a safety net for all people are anti-capitalist. They say attempts to prevent monopolies are anti-capitalist. They say efforts that strengthen weak unions and weaken exploitative owners are anti-capitalist. They say plans to normalize worker ownership and regulations protecting consumers, workers, and environments from big business are anti-capitalist. They say laws taxing the rich more than the middle class, redistributing pilfered wealth, and guaranteeing basic incomes are anti-capitalist. They say wars to end poverty are anti-capitalist. They say campaigns to remove the profit motive from essential life sectors like education, healthcare, utilities, mass media, and incarceration are anti-capitalist. In doing so, these conservative defenders are defining capitalism. They define capitalism as the freedom to exploit people into economic ruin, the freedom to assassinate unions, the freedom to prey on unprotected consumers, workers, environments, the freedom to value quarterly profits over climate change, the freedom to undermine small businesses and cushion corporations, the freedom from competition, the freedom not to pay taxes, the freedom to heave the tax burden onto the middle and lower class, the freedom to commodify everything and everyone, the freedom to keep poor people poor and middle income people struggling to stay middle income and make rich people richer. It says the history of capitalism, of world warring, classing, slave trading, enslaving, colonizing, depressing wages, and dispossessing land and labor and resources and rights bears out the conservative definition of capitalism. Okay. Let's dig into this a little bit, because we're going to talk about this on a podcast. We've got a great guest, too. And cover a lot of topics with Daniel and a few. But I just felt the need that this has to be up top. And I want to dig into this. Because he says to love capitalism is to love racism. So if you believe in capitalism, you're racist now, right? This is being fed to our kids in colleges and high school as required reading. Popular definitions of capitalism, like populist racist ideas, do not live in historical or material reality. That's what he's saying. So capitalism is basically not real. That's what we're teaching our kids. Racism and capitalism were birthed together from the same unnatural causes, and they shall one day die together from unnatural causes. So he predicts capitalism is going to no longer exist, which means what? We're going to have a socialist society. Because they say attempts to prevent monopolies are anti-capitalist, so you believe in monopolies? They say campaigns to remove the profit motive from essential life sectors like education, healthcare, utilities, mass media, incarceration are anti-capitalist. So he believes these industries should not be motivated to make profits. I mean, I wonder how many jobs that are going to be lost if these guys don't focus on making a profit. Are we talking millions, tens of millions, right? He says these conservative defenders are defining capitalism. They define capitalism as the freedom to exploit people in economic ruin, the freedom to assassinate unions, the freedom to prey on unprotected consumers, workers, and environments. So I believe in capitalism. I guess that means I'm racist. I guess that means I'm exploiting people into economic ruin. Really? Is that what I'm doing? I mean, I never realized that I was a racist piece of garbage. I mean, who preys on the weak and believes in monopolies and doesn't want to help everyone listen to this podcast better their lives by making better and smarter investment decisions. I never knew this before. Just getting educated. It goes right into the heart of what my entire podcast is about. Teaching people about investments. Ignoring all the bullshit out there, right? That people trying to take advantage of you. I've been through the ringer. I've worked on Wall Street. I've been doing this for 30 years. My dad did it for 30 years before me. When I was 7, 8, 9 years old, that's all we did was talk about the markets. Growing up at the dinner table. It's my life, it's my blood. This is what I do. But I'm a racist now. I don't care about the people, according to this book. And look, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. You have the right to agree or disagree. This is America, freedom of speech. That's fine. No problem with that. What I do have a problem with, this book is being fed to high school and college kids. The New York Times put it on a list of recommended anti-racist books kids and teens should be reading. North Carolina State, their College of Education, has this as required reading. Public schools in New York City have this as required reading. Same, UC San Francisco. I mean, the list is probably in the hundreds where this specific book is required reading. Now, forget that you're a Democrat or Republican for a minute. Just for a minute. There's most people who are not on the far right or the far left believe that America is the greatest country on earth, right? It's filled with opportunity. We love to live here. It's safe. We have unlimited resources to continue growing our nation. If you work hard enough, you can succeed. I believe most of us think that, right? Now, Republicans and Democrats, well, we have different ideas on how to make America better, and that's fine. That's fine. That's what our foundation was built on. It's debate. Always questioning everything. But to promote capitalism as if you are racist for believing it, as if this is some kind of terrible ideology that's destroying our nation, that if you work hard, you won't succeed, and you're promoting this to our children. To our children. Why is this important? Because our children listen to their teachers. They're influenced by who's teaching them. If you're a terrorist, you're influenced by the person telling you that America killed your relatives. They're the worst place in the world. These guys want to destroy. You're going to believe what these people tell you, especially since your parents are sending you to these schools to learn. But talking about kids, the future of America, and these kids get influenced very easily. I grew up in Catholic schools. Believe in God, Jesus Christ, never committed sin. Religion. Only to realize that, the grammar school I attended and the high school I attended both had priests and coaches who were molesting boys and got removed to go to different schools to do the same thing, covered up. Doesn't mean I don't believe in God or being Catholic, since my daughters do take religion classes. They decided to go to public school this year for the first time. They both wanted to go and they take religion classes on the side. Catholic. But my youngest talks about God all the time. God's going to punish you if you curse. If I curse by accident at the house or whatever. Because this is what's being taught to by the teachers. They influence our kids. Now look where we are today. we saw violent protests all across the nation, or just protests, leading up to the election. Most of them, I think we'll agree, were peaceful, but some were not. And many of those people who were not peaceful that got caught, whether it was looting, burning cars and buildings, beating up old people, which was caught on camera, shouting in the face of police officers saying they hope their kids die. I don't know if you saw those. That was pretty amazing. Well, many of these kids got caught. They actually came from privileged families. And their families had lots of money, which they made because America provided them with that opportunity through capitalism. But now, look how everything is changing. Look what's being fed to our younger generation through our schools now. Guys, this is one of our biggest concerns facing our nation, no matter what side you're on. This is an incredible far-left agenda that's poisoning the future of our country, which are our kids. And for anyone listening to this podcast, it's an extreme, crazy left agenda that the New York Times, one of the oldest papers in the world, founded in 1851, is pushing. And it surprises me that they're pushing this. Because the New York Times is actually a publicly traded company. It's on the New York Stock Exchange. Has a $7.5 billion market cap. Trades on an exchange where people could buy and sell shares. Which operates as a business that makes profits. Which is going to drive their stock higher. Pretty funny because in 1893, it almost went under. Thanks to a gentleman called Adolph Ochs, which published the Chattanooga Times. He paid $75,000 for controlling interest when they were about to go under. It's pretty incredible when you think about it. A person who is a leader in the industry, runs a company that's a leader in the industry, decided to fund your organization, your paper, and grow it into a world brand. Again, that sounds a lot like capitalism to me. Now, my question is, how are hardworking parents allowing schools to get away with this? I mean, you look at these schools, they love money more than anything. So take your kids out of these schools. And these schools that are so in favor of the kids, I mean, they have no problem raising tuition for kids, which increase, by the way, this is a fact. Tuition increases on average 8% a year. We're not even at 2% inflation. So 4 times the rate of inflation, more than that. Continue year after year after year, right? Again, that's the inflation rate for tuition, or how much these schools rip off these college kids while blaming everyone else for these high costs. It's not the school's fault. No, it's everyone else's fault. These loans that the kids took, it's everyone else's fault except for the colleges, the schools. But these college institutions are making a fortune. Profits that Ibram Kendi called racist. They're making money. They're making profits, these schools. So they're racist too? Right? They're racist organizations? And you're doing this while teaching the kids that capitalism is the enemy? And why would you do that? Well, they have an agenda. Because they're funded by state tax dollars. These schools are able to get paid because the government provides students with tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans that get paid to these colleges. So, of course, they want that to happen. They want it to be more socialist. That's how they get paid. That's how they make more money. That's what it's about. Again, I have no problem with anyone's opinion, but you're feeding this. This is required reading for hundreds of schools across the country right now. This is what they're being fed. This is what they're being conditioned to think. That America is terrible. Capitalism is terrible. It's a cancer that needs to be stopped. And not just from parents speaking up, but even college kids who graduated. And the ones buying stocks on Robinhood, making a living, saying, hey, learning about trading, entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs starting new ventures. Work hard. If you do, you'll get rewarded. That's what this country provides. But we don't want to do that anymore based on these books. I mean, this is really required reading? Maybe I'm just naive, but I never knew this is what it's like in today's school system. I'd love to hear from you guys. FrankCurzioResearch.com. Is this what you're seeing in your school? Is this what you really want your kids to learn? That capitalism, if you believe in capitalism, you're a racist? Are you kidding me? And I can tell you, if teachers start pounding these ideas into my daughter's head when they go to college and they start saying, hey, capitalism is terrible, and that's what they're teaching them, or you're racist for working hard, starting your own company, hiring people, and trying to profit off it, if they're pounding this into my daughter's heads, I got to tell you, I will rip the pages out of the book they're teaching and jam it down their throat. That's how serious I am about this and how damaging it could be for this country. If you really love this country, if you really work hard, I know so many people right now that are successful that busted their ass, that came from nothing, started their own business. You know how hard it is to start your own business? I never knew it until I did. My dad did. But man, I mean, you have your own business, you don't take a minute off. Every night you're working, everything. You're trying to find ways to build your company, to grow it, worrying about the risks, worrying about your employees, worrying about providing the best service to your customers. I love it. It's fantastic. It's a lot of work. But now you're saying people like this are racist and this is the enemy and you should not be thinking like this? Okay, it wouldn't be a big deal if you just had a channel on TV that's just talking about it, right? It's a big deal. Okay, fine. That's their agenda. They want to talk. You're teaching this. You're influencing our kids to believe this. That's why you're seeing a lot of these people who riot. The anger. Have you seen the anger? Look at some of even the so-called peaceful protest is where nobody gets shot, killed, or punched in the face, right? But yet, you look at these protests when they're shouting in the faces of cops, these kids, and just listen to what they're saying. I mean, it's the anger that they have. Where do they get it from? Our school systems. Just really, really difficult to believe. Surprised to hear this. Again, maybe I'm naive. I heard stories. I didn't know this was being forced down their throats. Especially Fairfax, one of the largest school districts, high school districts in America, as required reading. So parents, please, you got to speak up. I mean, if you believe this, you shouldn't even be listening to this podcast because you don't believe in capitalism, right? And again, it's not Democrat, it's not Republican. It's not, I mean, we all have our differences. We just believe that, hey, our country would be better off and be more successful based on certain policies, which is fine. This is something that's totally different. And right now, it is spreading like a cancer that needs to be stopped.